Hey loves, it's Diana here. Have you ever felt that gut-wrenching sensation when your entire world threatens to collapse around you? That moment when everything you believed about your marriage suddenly hangs by the thinnest thread? I never thought I'd be sharing this story with you, but sometimes the deepest wounds become our greatest testimony. My heart was shattered in a bathroom stall, of all places, but what I discovered afterward changed everything. If you've ever experienced betrayal or questioned someone you love, keep watching. My story might just give you the strength you need today. I still remember exactly how it felt. The cold ceramic of the bathroom tile against my knees, the acrid smell of disinfectant burning my nostrils as I hunched over the toilet bowl, cursing those questionable scallops from lunch. It was a Monday night just before midnight at my husband Mark's office building where I'd stopped to pick him up after his late meeting. I'm Diana Morgan, 37, a senior insurance investigator known for my meticulous attention to detail. The human lie detector, they call me. After 14 years of marriage to Mark and raising our beautiful daughters Haley and Sophie, I thought I knew everything about my life, about us. At Patterson and Hall Insurance, I'm the one they call when millions are on the line, the woman who can spot inconsistencies others miss, who can tell when someone's lying by the flutter of an eyelid or a misplaced word. Funny how none of that mattered as I sat there, pale and shaky from food poisoning, when the bathroom door swung open and two male voices filtered in. I recognized one instantly, Gavin Rhodes, an underwriter from the third floor. His cocky, overconfident tone had always grated on my nerves. I stayed quiet, hoping they'd finish quickly and leave. No woman wants to emerge from a stall after obvious gastrointestinal distress. But what came next froze every cell in my body. Dude, I'm telling you, I nailed Morgan's husband last week at the company party. Gavin's words hit me like a sledgehammer. Mark? No way. The other man. Troy, I later learned, sounded skeptical. He's way out of your league, and he's been married forever. Swapped his scotch when he wasn't looking, added a little something extra. Gavin chuckled. Got him nice and relaxed. By the time everyone was leaving, he could barely walk straight. Told him I'd help him call Diana to pick him up, but we never made that call. My stomach, already in revolt, now threatened to empty itself again. Mark had come home late that night, claiming he'd stayed to help clean up after the party. I'd believed him without question. So what, you took advantage of a drunk man in a parking lot? Troy's voice had an edge to it. Advantage? Please, Gavin laughed. He was all over me once we got to the back seat, laughing, moaning, begging for it like he'd been waiting for it to happen. The sink ran. I could picture Gavin's smug face in the mirror as he continued. We're meeting again Saturday while Deanna's watching their kids. He set it up yesterday, said he'd be getting a haircut. 3 hours at the barber? My ass. The pain from my food poisoning transformed into a fist squeezing my heart. I thought about how Mark had been with me all week. Normal? Loving? There'd even been a night where he was more passionate than usual. Was that guilt sex? But nothing else had changed. No suspicious phone checking. No strange hours. No unusual behavior. Something wasn't adding up. How did Gavin know Mark's haircut schedule? He hadn't even mentioned it to me. If Mark was innocent, why would Gavin fabricate such a detailed story about him specifically? But if he was guilty, why was he acting so normal at home? They left, their laughter fading down the hallway, while I remained frozen, my mind racing with questions I never thought I'd have to ask about the man I'd shared my life with for 14 years. Haley and Sophie's faces flashed in my mind. My daughters, 10 and 8, the center of my universe. What would this mean for them? For us? I didn't know which possibility was worse. That my husband was cheating on me, or that one of his colleagues was spreading vicious lies about him. Either way, someone was going to pay. Because if there's one thing being an investigator has taught me, it's that the truth always leaves a trail, and I'm very, very good at following trails. Have you ever had your trust so completely shattered that you question everything you thought you knew? Drop a heart in the comments if you've been there. Trust me, I understand exactly how it feels. I couldn't sleep that night as I lay beside Mark, listening to his steady breathing. I replayed the company party in my mind. I'd left for about 2 hours to investigate an art theft at a nearby gallery, an emergency call from a high-value client. When I returned, Mark was sitting with Gavin, Travis Hull, Gavin's boss, and Travis's wife. Nothing seemed amiss. Mark appeared sober, engaged in conversation. Gavin left their table shortly after I arrived. I remembered asking Mark if everything was okay, and he'd smiled, squeezed my hand, and said he'd missed me. Just a normal interaction between husband and wife. What wasn't normal was what happened when we got home. Mark initiated sex, rare for that late hour. He was unusually passionate, almost desperate in his movements. At the time, I'd chalked it up to the excitement of the night. Maybe the 2 glasses of whiskey he'd mentioned having. Now I wondered if it had been guilt driving his actions, trying to wash away Gavin's touch with mine. But the days that followed showed no change in his behavior. He helped the girls with homework, planned meals with me, maintained his exercise routine. Our conversations flowed naturally, no suspicious phone checking. No mysterious appointments. No unexplained absences. I began watching him more carefully, applying the techniques I'd perfected over years of catching insurance fraudsters. I started subtle tests, casually mentioning Gavin's name in conversation, bringing up the party, discussing office gossip that included Troy. Nothing. Not a flicker of unease crossed his face. If anything, he seemed too normal, too composed. Is this what it feels like to go crazy? To question everything you thought was certain? Last night, I decided to probe deeper. "What are your plans this Saturday?" I asked as we cleaned up after dinner. "Haircut," he replied easily. "Starting around 1 o'clock. Shouldn't take more than an hour and a half." "Great." I was thinking of asking Gavin to join us for dinner afterward. Make it a foursome with Mike and Brianna. His hands paused while loading the dishwasher, just for a second, but enough for me to notice. "Gavin from my office?" He resumed his task, not meeting my eyes. "He's weird, Diana. I only chatted with him a couple times at the party to be polite, but he gives me the creeps." The explanation made sense, but his reaction was too strong, his dismissal too forceful. Was he steering me away from suspicion? Or was this genuine dislike? That night, lying awake again, I made my decision. 14 years of marriage, 2 children, and a life built together. All of it deserved more than blind suspicion or naive trust. It deserved the truth, whatever that might be. I'm an investigator. It's time I started acting like one. This morning, I pulled strings to access the company's surveillance van, officially for a case involving suspected workers' compensation fraud. I prepared a GPS tracker, a voice-activated recording device, and a small bug I could slip into the wallet Mark always carries when he goes out. The plan took shape with clinical precision. I would track his car. The surveillance van would be parked near the Skyview Motel, the place Gavin had mentioned. Cameras would automatically record from 1 p.m. Saturday, when Mark would supposedly be meeting him. Before finalizing everything, I needed to verify what I'd heard. I invited Troy for a ride to survey a building for an insurance claim, simple enough to arrange. Once we were alone in my car, I turned to him with the calm demeanor that has made witnesses confess to million-dollar fraud schemes. "I know everything, Troy. I need you to fill in the rest." His face paled. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I was in the bathroom stall Monday night. I heard everything Gavin said about my husband." Troy's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. "Look, Diana, I swear I don't know if any of it's true. Gavin talks big all the time." "But he gave specifics about Saturday." "What exactly did he say?" Troy fidgeted with his seatbelt. "He said he booked a room at the Skyview. Said your husband would meet him at 2:15. But Diana, the guy's full of shit half the time." I recorded our entire conversation. First piece of evidence collected. The hunter in me, the woman who spent a career tracking lies, was fully awake now. Saturday would reveal whether my husband was the victim of malicious gossip or whether I'd been sleeping beside a stranger for 14 years. Either way, someone was about to regret ever involving the Morgan family in their games. Friday morning, I threw myself into finalizing every detail of my surveillance plan with the methodical precision I apply to million-dollar fraud cases. This wasn't just another investigation, it was my life, my family potentially falling apart before my eyes. I drove the surveillance van to Skyview Motel and parked it in view of the room I'd confirmed was reserved under Gavin's name. The setup was comprehensive. Cameras positioned to capture a direct view of the door, programmed to record automatically from 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Saturday. I checked the microphones I'd planted in Mark's wallet and car, ensuring they transmitted clearly to the recording devices in the van. Everything was configured to operate in stealth mode. No indicator lights, no detectable signals. My hands moved with practiced efficiency, but my mind was chaos. What would I do if the cameras caught my husband entering that motel room? How would I face my daughters? How could 14 years of marriage dissolve in a single afternoon? With the technical preparations complete, I made one more stop: the motel's front desk. I flashed a fake insurance investigator ID along with a story about potential insurance fraud involving a registered guest. "I need to confirm if a Gavin Rhodes has reserved a room for tomorrow," I told the young clerk, sliding a folded $100 bill across the counter with my ID. The clerk glanced at the money, then tapped at his computer. "Yes, ma'am. Mr. Rhodes has room 217 reserved for tomorrow afternoon." My stomach tightened. First confirmation. "I need to conduct surveillance as part of our investigation," I continued. "Is there a location where I could park an unmarked vehicle with a clear view of that room?" Another $50 secured me the perfect spot, with the clerk's promise to look the other way. When I returned home that evening, I found Mark on the phone with his mother, arranging for the girls to spend the night at their grandmother's house. "Surprise date night," he whispered to me after hanging up, a mischievous smile playing on his lips. "I thought we could continue what we started Wednesday night." He'd ordered pizza for the girls and picked up a bottle of wine for us. After dropping off Haley and Sophie, he lit candles around our bedroom and put on the blue dress shirt I'd given him for our anniversary. I should have been thrilled. Instead, my investigator's mind dissected each gesture. Was this genuine affection or calculated distraction? Was he creating a perfect alibi for tomorrow by establishing a pattern of renewed passion? Still, I didn't refuse him. Part of me wanted to search for clues in his touch, to determine if his kisses felt different somehow. The other part simply wanted to hold on to what might be our last moments as husband and wife. Our lovemaking that night was intense, almost desperate. Mark initiated positions we'd never tried before. "Where did you learn that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. He laughed, breathless. "Magazine article about spicing up marriage. You like?" I nodded, but internally cataloged every detail: his expressions, his words, the way he held me afterward. All evidence to be compared against whatever tomorrow would reveal. Hope and suspicion battled within me as we lay in the dark. I focused on his breathing, wondering if a man planning to meet his lover tomorrow would sleep so peacefully beside his wife. Saturday morning arrived with painful normality. Mark woke early, humming as he dressed in casual clothes, jeans and a light sweater that highlighted his physique without seeming overtly provocative. "Don't forget I have my hair cut at 1, he reminded me over coffee. "What time is your meeting with the team?" "Around the same time," I answered, adjusting my own casual attire. "They want to go over the Hendricks case before the deposition Monday." As I loaded my laptop into my car, I deliberately left my phone behind, giving me an excuse to return inside. I found Mark in the bathroom applying aftershave, the wallet containing my microphone sitting on the counter beside him. "Forgot my phone," I said, watching his reflection in the mirror. He turned, smiled, and kissed my cheek. "Have fun with the team. Don't work too hard." I nodded, heart hammering in my chest. If this was the last time I saw my husband before discovering his infidelity, I wanted to remember him exactly as he was in this moment. Handsome, familiar, mine. "I love you," I said suddenly. Something flickered across his face. Surprise? Guilt? Affection? "I love you too, babe. Always." I drove away with his words echoing in my mind. "If today you betray me, you will no longer be my husband." At 12:30, I arrived at the surveillance van and activated all the equipment. By 1 p.m., the cameras were recording, and I retreated to a coffee shop across the street, close enough to monitor but far enough to avoid being seen. At 1:45, my phone buzzed with an alert from the motion sensors. Gavin's black Audi had pulled into the motel parking lot. I watched on my tablet as he entered room 217, carrying a small overnight bag. The trap was set. At 2:10, another alert. A car had arrived. I deliberately didn't look at the live feed. I couldn't risk the emotional fallout of seeing Mark walk into that room, not yet. I needed to maintain my composure for whatever confrontation waited ahead. Instead, I shut off the tablet and ordered another coffee, letting the automated systems do their work. You'll face the truth when it's time, I told myself. Not a moment sooner. Saturday evening arrived with nauseating normality. Mark and I had reservations at Cypress Inn, a date night we'd planned weeks ago. When I picked him up after his supposed haircut, he looked radiant in a sleek navy blazer, his hair indeed freshly styled. "You look beautiful," I said, searching his face for any sign of guilt or discomfort. His smile was genuine, reaching his eyes. "Thank you, and you look stunning as always." Throughout dinner, he leaned forward, engaged, asking about my meeting, the lie I'd told to cover my surveillance. He spoke animatedly about the girls' upcoming school play, a new project at work, even complimented my recent case resolution. With each word, my heart constricted further. Could he really compartmentalize like this? Go from another man's bed to a romantic dinner with his wife without a single tell? "I've been thinking," he said, reaching for my hand across the table. "We should plan that trip to the coast. Just us. The one we've been talking about for years." I nodded, forced to smile. "I'd like that." Back home, Mark led me upstairs, eyes smoldering with desire. "I'm yours," he whispered against my neck. "Forever." I hesitated, thoughts of the motel room flashing through my mind, but his hands were insistent, his mouth hungry against mine. We made love like we had during our honeymoon. Passionate, desperate, perfect. Too perfect. Instead of satisfaction, I felt hollowed out, each kiss and caress a potential lie. Sunday morning came with merciful silence. Mark took the girls to his mother's for their weekly visit. The moment his car disappeared down the street, I drove to the surveillance van and collected everything. Video recordings, audio files from the microphones, GPS data. Back home, I locked the doors, drew the curtains, and set up my laptop. Television volume up to mask any sounds, hands trembling, I inserted the drive containing footage from the motel. The video showed Gavin arriving at 1:45 p.m., exactly as my alerts had indicated. He entered room 217 with his overnight bag, checked his watch several times. At precisely 2:14 p.m., a person approached the door. Knee-length coat, sunglasses, hair partially obscured by a scarf. They knocked, and Gavin opened the door immediately, pulling them inside. Just before they disappeared into the room, they turned slightly, their profile visible for a split second. It wasn't Mark. I rewound, froze the frame, enhanced the image. The person was Travis Hull, my boss. The reality hit me like a physical blow. I checked Mark's schedule. Travis lived in the neighborhood near the barber shop. The timeline matched perfectly. Mark had gone to his haircut. Gavin had been meeting Travis. I sat back, mind reeling. Relief flooded through me, quickly replaced by anger. Gavin hadn't been sleeping with my husband. He'd been sleeping with our boss. And he'd used Mark's name as cover, knowing no one would believe he could seduce him, while simultaneously getting to brag about a conquest. I reached for my phone and called Travis's wife, Naomi. "I need to see you," I said when she answered. "Alone. I have something you need to see. We met at a small restaurant near the office." I brought the recordings, both the surveillance footage and the bathroom conversation I'd recorded with Troy. Naomi watched the video, her expression shifting from confusion to shock to rage. When I played the audio of Gavin boasting about sleeping with my husband, her knuckles whitened around her glass. "That son of a bitch has been sleeping with my husband and using your husband's name as cover," she said, voice dangerously low. "And he had the balls to spread rumors about Mark?" I nodded grimly. "I want them both gone, Gavin and Troy. Violation of company ethics." "Done," Naomi agreed immediately. "First thing Monday morning. I'll handle it personally." She paused. "Diana, thank you for bringing this to me privately. Most women would have gone straight to HR, created a scandal." "I know what it's like to have your marriage threatened," I replied. "What happens with you and Travis is your business. I'm just concerned about protecting Mark's reputation." Naomi extended her hand. "You have my word this stays between us. Gavin and Troy will be gone, and no one will ever know why." She sighed heavily. I owe you for this discretion. If you ever need anything. As I drove home, relief and anger battled within me. Mark had been faithful. It was Gavin who'd been unfaithful, not to me, but to our company, our code of conduct, using my husband's name to cover his affair with our boss. I thought about Mark's behavior over the past week, his passion, his tenderness, his complete normality. He hadn't been hiding guilt. He'd been loving me, just as he had for 14 years. I owed him an apology he'd never know about. And tomorrow, I'd watch Gavin and Troy clean out their desks, knowing that justice had been served, even if not in the way I'd expected. Truth, I reflected, is rarely what we think it is. My investigator's instinct had been right. Something was wrong, just not what I had feared. If you've ever discovered a painful truth that ultimately saved your relationship, hit that subscribe button right now. I promise you're not alone in this journey. Monday morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. The fluorescent lights seemed harsher, the cubicles more like battlements than workspaces. I watched each face that passed, wondering who else might have heard Gavin's lies about my husband. At precisely 9 a.m., Naomi Hull's assistant called Gavin Rhodes and Troy Barker into her office. The blinds closed immediately. I pretended to focus on paperwork, but my attention was fixed on that door, imagining the scene unfolding inside. My phone buzzed. Mark. "Hey, do you know what's happening?" he asked, voice low and curious. Naomi called Gavin and Troy into her office, and they've been in there for almost 30 minutes with the door shut. No idea, I lied. My first and hopefully last deception to my husband. Let me know if you hear anything else. Will do. Love you. Love you too. At 9:45, he called again. Something big is happening. Naomi just called security to the conference room. 10 minutes later, they're escorting Gavin and Troy to their desks. They're being told to collect their personal items. They're getting fired on the spot. I could hear the shock in his voice. Naomi is furious. I've never seen her like this. Her hands were shaking when she handed them their termination papers. Any idea why? I asked, maintaining my facade of ignorance. None. Nobody's saying anything. This is unprecedented. He paused. Diana, you work closely with Naomi. Do you think she'd tell you what happened? Maybe. Let's meet for lunch. Usual place at noon. At the small cafe 2 blocks from the office, Mark was already waiting, his eyes bright with curiosity. Before he could launch into theories about the morning's events, I placed my digital recorder and a pair of earbuds on the table. Before we talk, I need you to listen to something, I said quietly. Listen to all of it, then say whatever you want to say. His brow furrowed with confusion, but he put the earbuds in. I watched his face as the recording played. Gavin's voice bragging about sleeping with him, describing details of their supposed encounter. Troy's questions. Gavin's assertion they were meeting again at the Skyview Motel at the exact time Mark was scheduled for his haircut. His expression transformed from confusion to shock to anger. Color drained from his face, then rushed back in a flood of rage. He yanked out the earbuds. That lying bastard, he hissed, hands trembling. I never, not once, I was at Premier Cuts getting a trim. Is this why they were fired? Because he was spreading disgusting lies about me? Partly, I said, keeping my voice even despite the emotion rising in my throat. I heard them that night in the bathroom. I was in the stall when they came in. His eyes widened. You heard this? When? Monday night, last week. Understanding dawned on his face. That's why you've been different. You thought I... His voice broke. You believed him? I didn't want to believe him, I clarified, but I needed to know the truth. You could have just asked me, he said, hurt evident in his voice. And if you were guilty, would you have confessed? If you were innocent, would you ever look at me the same way again, knowing I'd suspected you? I shook my head. I needed proof. Not for me, but for us. He sat back, processing. So what did you do? I told him everything. The surveillance van, the cameras at the motel, the microphone in his wallet, the GPS tracker on his car. With each detail, his eyes grew wider. The person who entered that motel room wasn't you, Mark. It was Travis Hull. His hand flew to his mouth. What? Travis and Gavin? I nodded. Gavin was using your name as cover for his affair with the boss. He picked you because he knew no one would easily believe he could seduce you, and it let him brag about a conquest. I showed Naomi the footage yesterday. That's why they were fired. You really thought I might be cheating on you? He whispered, tears welling in his eyes. After 14 years? After everything we've built together? I reached across the table and took his hand. I trusted you, but I've spent my career watching people lie convincingly. When every logical sign pointed to deception, I needed evidence, not assumptions. If you were innocent, I needed to protect your reputation from Gavin's lies. If you were guilty... I paused. I needed to know what kind of woman I'd become that would make you look elsewhere. I would never, he said firmly. Not ever. I know that now. With certainty, no one can shake. Mark squeezed my hand, his expression softening. Most wives would have confronted me immediately, or worse, believed the rumors without question. You investigated. You sought the truth. It's what I do, I said simply. He shook his head, a small smile forming. No, it's more than that. You fought for us. You didn't want to believe the worst, but you weren't willing to live with doubt either. He leaned forward. I'll never forget this, Diana. You're the only woman I know who would investigate to save our love, not to destroy it. You don't need to thank me for that. I'm not thanking you, he said firmly. I'm acknowledging what we have, what we'll continue to have. As we left the cafe hand in hand, the weight that had pressed on my chest for a week finally lifted. The truth had tested us, but we'd emerged stronger. I thought of Haley and Sophie, our daughters who would never know how close their parents' marriage had come to the precipice. That night, as Mark curled against me in bed, he whispered, You know, I've been thinking about that weekend trip we talked about, just the two of us. The coast? I asked, stroking his hair. Yes, I think we should do it soon. He propped himself up on one elbow. Life's too short to postpone happiness, don't you think? I pulled him close, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne. I couldn't agree more. In my career, I've learned that evidence doesn't lie, even when people do. But the most important evidence isn't always what's captured on camera or recorded in statements. Sometimes it's written in the quiet moments between two people who've chosen each other again and again through every storm. That same Monday afternoon, Naomi called Mark into her office. When he returned to his desk 45 minutes later, his expression was a mixture of shock and excitement. He texted me immediately. We need to talk. Big news. Later, he told me everything. Naomi had welcomed him with an unnerving calmness, motioning him to the leather chair across from her desk. For several moments, she'd simply studied him, as if measuring his worth against something only she could see. I want to talk about Travis, she'd begun, her voice level. About how I never suspected the man I've loved for 12 years could betray me, how I had to see it on video to believe it. Mark had remained silent, unsure how to respond. I respect your wife, Naomi continued. Diana didn't just protect her family, she saved me from living a lie. Her gaze drifted to the family photo on her desk. My marriage is effectively over, though the paperwork will take time. Naomi had straightened then, slipping back into her role as company chairman. Please convey my gratitude to Diana and inform her that, effective next month, she's being promoted to Executive Vice President of Global Investigations. Mark had nearly dropped his notepad. Naomi outlined the details. I would oversee all investigative teams across America, Europe, and East Asia. We could choose to live near any branch office. The compensation package included substantial stock options, a company car, and a salary triple my current one. A woman like your wife can't remain in the same position forever, Naomi had concluded, and this company needs women like her. That evening, we had dinner as a family. Haley and Sophie chatted excitedly about school projects and playground politics, blissfully unaware of the seismic shifts that had occurred in their parents' lives over the past week. Across the table, Mark and I exchanged glances filled with a depth that hadn't been there before, a certainty forged in fire, unshakable now. After dinner, he poured us each a glass of wine and raised his in a toast. To the truth, he said softly. However painful or hard to swallow, it always needs to be known. I clinked my glass against his. To truth, and to those brave enough to seek it. After the girls were asleep, Mark led me to our bedroom. Unlike the previous nights where passion had been tinged with doubt or relief, this time was different. An affirmation rather than a test, every touch a renewal of what we'd almost lost. "I thought you would walk away," he whispered later, his head resting on my chest. "So many women would have. But you went all the way to the end, not to condemn me, but to save what matters most." I pulled him closer. I wasn't fighting because of doubt. I was fighting because I couldn't bear to lose you if you were still worth having. And you always were. The next morning, Naomi sent a company-wide email confirming that Gavin Rhodes and Troy Barker had been terminated for violations of company ethics policies. No specifics were given, but the office hummed with speculation. By afternoon, my official promotion letter arrived, along with a photo of Naomi and me shaking hands for the internal newsletter. The aftermath unfolded with an almost poetic sense of justice. Gavin faced a lawsuit for workplace harassment that destroyed any chance of future employment in the insurance industry. Troy quietly disappeared from the insurance world altogether. Travis left the city after filing for divorce from Naomi. According to office gossip, the settlement was generous but came with ironclad confidentiality agreements. Naomi herself changed, growing more reserved, more focused on work than ever before. She maintained contact with me, though brief messages, the occasional dinner when she visited our branch offices, always with the quiet respect of a woman who understands exactly what I did for her, even at my own emotional expense. 2 months later, Mark, the girls, and I relocated to the Florida branch office, a fresh start in a place where sunshine seemed to wash away the last shadows of doubt. We bought a house near the beach where Sophie and Haley could run barefoot in the sand and build castles at the edge of the water. On the flight down, Mark leaned his head against my shoulder and said, "Maybe I need to be investigated for the rest of my life if it makes you love me this much." I kissed his forehead. "No need, the case is closed." But in my heart, I knew something fundamental had shifted, not just in our marriage, but in me. The line between personal and professional, between the investigator and the wife, had blurred. I'd deployed every tool in my arsenal to protect what mattered most, and I'd do it again without hesitation. Because sometimes the greatest risk isn't in seeking the truth, but in allowing yourself to live with uncertainty when everything you love hangs in the balance. Some would call what I did extreme, invasive, perhaps even wrong. But as I watch my family build their first sand castle on our new beach, I know with absolute certainty I made the right choice. In the end, that's all any of us can hope for. The conviction that when it truly mattered, we chose the path that preserved what couldn't be replaced. If my story touched your heart today, please hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, sometimes finding the truth isn't about destroying what you have. It's about fighting to keep what matters most. Until next time, this is Diana, reminding you that even in our darkest moments, truth and love can guide us home.